Alrighty, let's get right into today's video. First off, I have so many cameras, but I did some research and we went and bought like one of these cheap 4K $100 camcorders to set up over here with my teleprompter. I don't know how it looks instead of using the iMac webcam. We're over here now, a little bit more legit. And of course, let's get right into today's video. Quentin Grimes. I know we talked about him yesterday indirectly when we were talking about Jalen Hood-Schifino, his new teammate. And tonight, ironically, we did this for the teleprompter. I didn't put what I wrote on the teleprompter. So if you look at me and see me glancing to the side, it's because I have what I wrote on a separate screen. Quentin Grimes was a guy that arrived in Philadelphia at the trade deadline in exchange for Kevin Martin, which basically the way you wanted to view it was, hey, Quentin Grimes had a higher ceiling than Caleb Martin, fit what they needed. He was a guy who did not sign a contract extension with the Dallas Mavericks after being on that team that went on the finals run, albeit they lost to the Boston Celtics, but he had been sort of a reclamation project for them after having a rough go with the Detroit Pistons the season prior. And his immediate impact has been undeniable. He had this 44-point explosion against the Warriors, which, if people do not remember, Quentin Grimes, when he ended up at Kansas, this guy was a 5-star recruit, one of the best players in the country. And he's a restricted free agent this offseason. The Sixers will have the ability to match any offer that a team extends. However, his price tag could rise significantly depending on his continued production. I think the low side of it is looking at probably a full mid-level exception, which I believe is near what Klay Thompson got, which is about like probably this year with the salary cap rising, 11-year 40. I mean, not 11-year 40, my apology. A little over 11 million, maybe like 12 million a year, 3-year 40. So what would that be? Like 13.33. And so far, Nick Nurse has a system that thrives on players who can play switchable defense, guard multiple positions, are adaptable, can handle the ball, and three-point shooting, which on paper, that makes Quentin Grimes an ideal fit, a former lead guard turned swingman. And throughout his career, he has produced as a high-level 3-and-D wing that guards 1 through 3. His catch and shoot ability is, I think, at the very least above average compared to other NBA players, a career 36% three-point shooter, and has shown the ability to be a secondary shot creator. I think having a guy like Nick Nurse who likes to deploy an aggressive defensive scheme that outside of the bigs, he wants his forwards, his guards, his wings, everybody switching, closing out, and providing constant perimeter pressure. Grimes 6'5" with I believe like a 6'10" wingspan, and having the ability to pressure players, as I said already, at the point of attack, closing out on the wing, and having now also the experience playing the playoff games, playing in a championship game, while not only being able to provide the defense, but the three-point shooting. He's averaging so far since joining Philly almost 11 field goal attempts, including 6 3-point attempts a game while shooting them at, 45%. He has that ability to get hot from deep, as seen in this 44-point game. And given the Sixers' need for an offensive weapon now that Joel Embiid's out for the season, it's seemingly Paul George will be shut down. And having a guy like Grimes who can play the 2 or the 3, with Jared McCain out for the season, Embiid, Paul George probably at some point will be shut down, Lowry and Eric Gordon, Grimes has the ability to switch between shooting guard and small forward. And he probably even in a pinch play point guard while also being able to guard the opposing team's toughest defensive assignments, either guards or wings. And the current depth chart, which really is Paul George, Andre Drummond, Tyrese Maxey, You got some Gershon Yabusele, Ricky Council. They've just brought over Lonnie Walker, Justin Edwards. I think given there's a lot of size on this team. He's a really good kind of connector between all those players, as he really does has an opportunity to carve out a role as a starter in between Tyrese and Paul George, especially if they want to move off of Kelly Oubre this offseason. I think Quentin Grimes is clearly a better player than Kelly Oubre in terms of impacting wins. I really think he'll be a more consistent offensive player, more consistent two-way player. And the pairing of Maxey, who's clearly the offensive engine this season for this team, 27.6 assists, but he's like 6'2". He's not an elite defender. He's not a cone, but Grimes is going to be able to offset some of his defensive weaknesses. Paul George is not a shooting guard anymore. He's clearly a forward. If they keep him, we've heard the rumblings. He's a guy that you move him to the forward position, you keep Yabusele, or you go look for an actual power forward. It's a little bit easier now to solve that, as Grimes helps limit some of those defensive weaknesses, and having Grimes 6'5" next to a 6'2", 6'1" guy in Maxey makes up for that. While Paul George, 34, George in his career was one of the best two-way players, but at this point, $49 million in the season. It's interesting, but Nick Nurse does prefer a wing-heavy team rotation, really just having one big at a time on the floor. And Paul George could really mentor Quentin Grimes into being a better shot creator and how to get, under the skin of some of those high-level scorers. And Justin Edwards is a rookie who's another young player who, as of late, has been playing some meaningful minutes, 24 minutes a night, 8 points, 3 rebounds, 1.5 steals. But I really think he's like a bigger Trevor Ariza. I've said this repeatedly. He's got good length and has some offensive upside. I just think Grimes has already clearly emerged as the more impactful player. And if we just even look at it, I want to see if we can what the exact stats are so far for Grimes. And was it like 8 games? He's averaging 13.4. Does that include his game from last night? Let me grab the keyboard right here. StatMuse. I will say StatMuse and NBA.com are the quickest for stats being added. Sixers stats. Here we go. His Sixers stats so far, I have right here 13.5. All right, now in 9 games right here, it's 13.5 going into tonight. Now he's averaging 17 points, 5.5 rebounds, 3 assists, while shooting 51% from the field on 12 field goals a night. Now 6 threes a night on 41%. So that's wild. The free throw rate is terrible though at 58. That'll correct itself out. But what else did we have that we might have not talked about? Okay, yeah. So right now, the Sixers are definitely treating this season as a gap year. I think that's the biggest thing, is they're treating this year as a gap season. And I think that's what you need to understand, is similar to like the Grizzlies last year, where they were able to go ahead and find Vince Williams, Scottie Pippen. You're doing the same thing here. Post-trade, he's showing that he could be a key piece moving forward. Having a guy who's now 9 games through, showing some great shooting, scoring chops, and essentially being like a tertiary or secondary scorer alongside Maxey, George, and obviously Joel Embiid, could solidify him to be paid, handsomely. Almost $14 million a year seems fair. And him being a restricted free agent, I think, again, on the low end, what Philadelphia would like is a $14 million contract. I would not be surprised if Quentin Grimes ends up commanding a $15 to $20 million annually, depending on how he finishes the situation. And given the salary cap situation, Philadelphia probably has some willingness to match an offer sheet. Obviously, this will be dependent on Embiid's health and moving forward, as if the Sixers do trade him, younger talent could be a priority. A guy like Grimes would be big. And then if Paul George is traded and they get somebody there, Paul George, even if they do or don't keep him, he's not a long-term fixture. Grimes could be an eventual replacement for him. And a team with cap space in the offseason could test their willingness to pay him by giving an offer sheet to Quentin Grimes that is a bit lucrative for their taste. So that is something to consider. Now, I think Quentin Grimes has played himself into a major role with the Sixers, proving he's more than just a role player. He's a starting level guy who is able to score as a shot creator, has the defensive switchability and adaptability to guard multiple positions, and he's showing that he can thrive in Nick Nurse's situation. The biggest question is whether the Sixers will invest in him long term or use him as a trade asset, maybe a sign and trade in the offseason. I think if he continues this hot shooting and being a defensive player, the Sixers will be, I think, forced to prioritize resigning him, even if it means matching a competitive offer sheet. With Paul George aging and not looking the best, the team's still searching for long-term depth alongside Maxey and Embiid. Grimes might be one of the best available two-way players for them that isn't going to break the bank. So that's it. I hope you guys did enjoy. Let me hear your thoughts down below in the comment section if you guys do agree with me. And let me know what you guys think of this new little setup we have right here. I think like now looking back, and also I feel like I like went sitting like slouching. So now I'm mad that we didn't talk into this the whole way. But that's it. I'm done. Let me know. Ciao.